Little Joe and the Sea Dragon. Little Joe lived in the peaceful fishing village of Carra-on-Sea, where nothing out of the ordinary ever happened. Most of the people there worked very hard for a living, but Little Joe, who was rather lazy, spent all day reading about dragons. His favorite book was Everything You Need to Know About Dragons and Monsters. "I wish I could meet a real dragon," he said to himself one morning. He did not have long to wait for his wish to come true. That very night, a violent storm drove the waves up the beach and flooded the fields near the coast, and when the tide went out, it left a vast sea of mud with driftwood and masses of tangled seaweed everywhere. The next morning, Little Joe walked along the beach, looking for seashells he may not have seen before. Suddenly, he noticed a huge pile of seaweed, and it seemed to be moving. He prodded it with a stick, and a moment later, he was running for his life. He just could not believe his eyes. The seaweed was following him. Sticking out from the mass of green was a slimy, dragon-like head with a forked tail and huge slime-covered wings. Joe reached the village and raced down the street shouting, "Look out! Look out! There's a dragon about!" But the villagers only laughed and said, "Joe reads so many books about dragons, he's beginning to see them. He ought to do an honest day's work instead." But that night, a horrible dragon, half covered with slime, poked its head through the pub window and sent the drinkers flying in fear out of the back door. Then poor Mrs. Clapper, the shopkeeper, saw the monster in her garden, burning her cabbages to ashes. She had to climb up onto the roof for safety. And Mr. Murphy, the timid grocer, had a fearful fright when the dragon swallowed all his tins of spam and corned beef and then tried to drag him out of bed. By now, everyone in the village was in a panic. Patrick O'Brien, the policeman, rode along the street on his bicycle shouting, "Lock your doors and windows tonight if you want to stay alive." Some of the villagers hid inside the church tower for safety. Others escaped to the next village. But Little Joe did not hide. He remained in his house and decided to face the dragon. Searching through his books, he came across a passage that read, "No dragon can bear the sight of his own reflection in a mirror." This gave him an idea. First, he opened his bedroom window wide. Then, he hung a large looking-glass on the wall opposite. Finally, he switched off all the lights and waited. Just after midnight, the dragon crept along the street and stopped outside Joe's front gate. Breathing fire and smelling of bad fish, it reached up to his window and squeezed its terrible great head through it. Hiding near the door, Joe switched on the light. The dragon suddenly saw its reflection in the mirror, screamed in horror, and fell backwards into the garden. It slithered on its belly all the way down the street to the harbour, plunged into the ocean, and was never seen again. The villagers crept out from their hiding places and gathered in the street, cheering and waving and shouting as they learnt of Little Joe's magnificent feat. Joe was appointed Chief Dragon Slayer of Carra-on-Sea and was saluted by everyone he met, and no one ever said he was lazy or should do an honest day's work again.